This is Matt from While She Sleeps, and you're watching Heavy New York.
Heavy New York!
What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the Gramercy Theater, and we are here with Matt of While She Sleeps. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for asking if you can have my time.
Yeah, of course. It's so great to have you here. As I told you before we started rolling, that So What was one of my personal favorites to come out in 2019. I just really want to know, like, how the making of this record was. Like, what was the idea going into the studio for the making of So What?
You filming me? You are. Tough question. So What making process was just, we were kind of a bit lost in what do you do after You Are We, because that was the first record we did in like our own studio. We built a studio to make You Are We in, and then when it came to So What, we were quite like, with every record you're like, how do we top the last one? But with So What, we were kind of like, the only way we're going to be able to make something that we're stoked with is if we sort of try and develop the sound and be not trapped by any kind of musical boundaries. So before So What, it all got a little bit experimental, I think. Sean writes pretty much constantly throughout the cycle anyway, so there was like a good bank of ideas starting, and then we just sort of hone into the studio and start developing them into songs. And I think we wrote for like probably like me in the studio probably like 3 or 4 months before the record started. Sean in the studio about 8 months before the record started.
Awesome. Were you like trying to make this a direct continuation from what You Are We had, or did you want to try to maybe break out of that and do something different for So What?
We don't really know until we start doing it whether it's what we want to make. We never have like a starting idea of like, oh, I want it to be like this or I want it to sound like that. It's more just a case of what starts to come out that we're like, ooh, I'm into this. It feels like it has a vibe. It feels like it has something like an avenue of difference from stuff we've done before and stuff in the scene. Something that we feel like you've got to wait till that bit where you're like, that's the sort of shit I'm like ready to release and be stoked about, because that's the fear is like, do you want to stand behind that? You've got to be fully trusting that this is like exactly what you want to put out, and until that sort of comes around, it's just keep writing until you're like, here we go, now this is a vibe.
Mm-hmm. One thing I was curious about is, like, I've always thought, like a song like The Guilty Party or Good Grief or Set You Free or any of those songs, like, the vocal styles change so much from going very clean to very aggressive and so on. So do you have to maybe, like, adjust your guitar playing at all to fit the vocal style?
Just, we're trying to have more dynamics, so there's more. If you stay heavy all the time, it actually loses its power. So every record we've sort of tried to have more dynamics, so more like clean sections, so that when it actually gets heavy, like as far as like changing your guitar, it's just a difference between going clean to distort, and vocally the same. Sometimes we sing full pelt over a clean section, sometimes it's less, but the whole thing's all, you're adjusting for everything all the time anyway. Mm-hmm. Different sounds, different like dynamics and styles, and it's always changing.
Do you lay down the rhythm section first before the other guitar player writes the leads over it, so they know like what key or scale to play in? Or
no, it's all just written together as one big jigsaw puzzle. Basically, Sean making loads of different riffs, and then them getting developed as the studio goes on. And it's rarely ever written in like a structured way of like, oh, this is a song. It more starts with just a pool of different riffs and chorus ideas and like different bits of songs, and then we sort of sit there and start putting them together and making them into what eventually becomes the songs.
Mm-hmm. How do you know like when the song is finished? Because I hear so many different elements incorporated into it.
It's never finished. That's why we take so long in the studio, and we always have done, because it's like we go, once we get the structure and the thing ready to be like, right, now we're going to the studio, now we're going to start recording, then you sort of start again but with all those things, but they're then like the base layer, and then in the studio we like hone in on all those little individual, like all the individual instrumentation, and try and make each one special in its own right, even if it's just the basic rhythm track, or the bass line or anything like that. Like on the pre-production, when we're like, right, that's going to be the chorus, it's the like one step back of refinement, and then in the studio we go double on it. So that's where we get like, we then get excited because it's working well and start putting more on and have more ideas, because as soon as something's good and you're enjoying it, it's most likely that moment when you're like, oh, I've had another idea, this works over it too. Like what? And in the studio you get to sort of witness the song coming together in this beautiful, very real way compared to pre-production.
One thing I was curious about is, this is going to be like my fourth time seeing While She Sleeps live tonight, and like, seeing you live, first of all, executing the songs are awesome. I know exactly what song you're playing, but like, is there maybe a similar energy that you put into your live presence as you do when you're in the studio, or is it a completely separate game altogether?
You mean like, are we thinking about how it will be done live when we're in the studio? Yeah, kind of. Not overly, but you do know when you're like, that's going to be fucking sick live. And like, we're starting to listen to ourselves a bit more in that world where you kind of like, you have to imagine what it's going to be like live and then think, is that actually just that could go on the record, because we know it's going to translate so much better when it becomes a live thing, but never too much that we're doing things for a live purpose or vice versa.
Now, this is the first headlining North American tour for While She Sleeps, after years, opening with Parkway Drive and Architects and Arch Enemy. So for this North American tour, are we going to be seeing like a different side of While She Sleeps than we may have ever seen before?
Hopefully, just, this is like, we're always playing in someone else's show. Do you know what I mean? I like to think that what we're doing on this tour it's our show. The vibe is a Sleeps kind of vibe for the evening, and like, hopefully that's nicer than some of the other shows. I don't know. I love our gigs, and I love the fan base we've created is like the coolest people, and it's always a really nice vibe in the room. Like, people aren't out to like hurt each other, they're out to like help each other and hopefully meet new people and that kind of thing. So I hope that in terms of what you'll get from tonight versus seeing us at another thing, hopefully it feels like a good feeling of unity and like a real nice environment for a gig, and not a 30-minute set, which is all we would usually do in America, because we're always opening or whatever. So yeah, more tracks, and yeah, it should be good.
Now, I'm coming from the UK because I've interviewed a lot of bands who are, ironically, too, on your label as well. But, like, the UK metal scene or metalcore scene with you guys, Bury Tomorrow, Employed to Serve, so many great Architects. So has there been, like, a scene in the UK that you guys have sort of, like, cut your teeth in? Or was the goal of Sleeps to kind of go outside your hometown more to get the name out there?
The UK's got a sick scene. Like, we grew up playing with loads of bands that most of aren't necessarily going anymore, but then there's like a few still, basically like Bury Tomorrow and Architects are like the only ones, and Bring Me the Horizon, the only ones that we were like in that like that earlier scene with that are still there. And I don't know, it's never been like a focus to be like super included in any specific scene or genre. We just wanted to make something that we enjoyed, and once that started happening, we just like, I love the community that While She Sleeps has created, so like I kind of don't care which scene or genre it's in, so long as it's just like everyone enjoys it.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is actually, because I saw that you were designing some merch for the future, so I know that everybody kind of works so well. You guys really do everything on your own. When it comes to, like, merch designing, is there maybe a similar creative energy or a similar creative idea as opposed to when you're playing music, or is it a separate thing altogether?
It's the same mental process as making music, because it's make something you like, make something you think represents us in a true fashion, not trying to mimic someone else, not trying to sound or look like anyone else. And like Sleeps has an aesthetic because we've done the art and the design and like the covers and the merch. We've done everything for that forever. So I like to think that you see something, you're like, oh, it's definitely While She Sleeps, or like, so that sort of stays in my head to an extent. Like, I don't want to just turn up tomorrow and it looks like Adidas. Do you know what I mean? I want you to be like, oh, it's a Sleeps shirt, but without too much of a border or like constricting rules of, oh, it should look like this. We kind of just do what we like and hope that other people like it. And I think that's the best thing to do. Like, most of the time, your fans like seeing you happy and confident in what you create, rather than the last thing I'd want to see in a band I love is watching them look like they hate what they're doing, or they're doing it because they have to, or because they can't step out of that box that they've created. So like, I try and leave all those, just do whatever the fuck we want and hope that other people like it.
Did you do the album artwork too, or
Yeah.
So like, because I've noticed like the You Are We album artwork compared to the So What album artwork was like so different. Like, so I'd imagine that like, do you sometimes need to hear the music before you come up with an album cover idea?
Yeah, kind of. And like, we designed You Are We artwork on the road, and then we designed So What artwork at home at the warehouse. And most of the time when we're doing like album artwork and things like that, we like to make it physically, like, so make it in a physical form and then photograph it, which we obviously couldn't do for You Are We. But with So What, that's just all, it's actually nothing. There's no like typed in typefaces or digital manipulation. It's just a photo of the amp, and that was an amp that we then painted and spray painted. And
Really?
yeah.
That was a very graphic picture. I'm actually really surprised.
And then if you open the gatefold vinyl, it pulls the actual cab open and you can see inside, and that's all just the same, just more. And me and Sean did that we just started experimenting with loads of different mediums of what we wanted it to be on. And it was a really fun piece of art to create. I love the cover of it.
It seems like you focus on it's not just the music, but it's also the presentation of it.
Definitely. Like, I've always been obsessed with art and graphics and those kind of things, and I hate it when a band I love has an identity or an aesthetic that I don't love. Like, the best ones are when you love everything about the whole, like, I like stuff because both sides of that. So like, I want people to be able to love While She Sleeps' music, but also love the whole thing that comes with it, and have an image in their head and a colour and a style when you think of it. Because that's what I like with music, and I like with everything. It's not just about that one element. Like, take the show for example. It's like, if we just stood there and stood still and played those songs, like, would it feel as powerful as if we all could go and like we do, we go on stage and we use it as this moment to like let free of any build up and like have like a nice moment of expression where we like do whatever we want, feel really free, shout our heads off, and like that's part of that like outlet then translates to the crowd, and that's what they get to do too. Like, having like artwork that you don't care about, to me, is the same thing as like playing a gig where we stand still, because you'd watch it and you'd be like, oh, it sounds really cool, but
Do you know how many bands I discovered just because I liked the album artwork and like?
yeah,
so.
totally. And like, I grew up in that like exact same world, going to town, getting a CD, riding an Omont bus, reading the lyrics, going through the booklet, and like that matters. And we've lost a huge amount of that with music becoming very digital. And I don't want that to get lost to While She Sleeps. I want that to be something, you might just be a thumbnail, but if you buy the vinyl, you're like, oh wow, the artwork's still amazing, they care about it, it's done by them. Like, and how can you expect something to represent you properly if it's not done by the people who made it?
You should do a tour with like Killswitch Engage, because Mike D does all the artwork, Baroness, and like Converge, and make it a concert / art exhibition.
Mate, that would be sick.
Yeah. Just, I wouldn't, put display it in the middle of the pit or something like that.
Yeah, no. Have a little gallery in the merch area.
So before we go, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Really looking forward to the show tonight. Is there just anything else with While She Sleeps you would like to promote? This will be uploaded by midnight, so if it hasn't been announced, don't say.
Nothing to promote, but thanks to everyone who supports Sleeps. Thanks to everyone who's come into these American shows. Like, had no idea what this tour was going to be like, and we've sort of been amazed every night at the amazing American While She Sleeps fans that exist that we didn't know about. So yeah, thanks for coming, and fingers crossed for a good show in New York.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Matt of While She Sleeps. So what? Pick that up if you haven't already.
Woo!
We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.